At $200, a Super Nintendo setup costs twice as much as the old system. For the money, the company promises better pictures, sound, and adventure. Now you're playing with power, superpower. You're the king, I tell you! The king!
Only for Super NES.
Only on Super NES.
You're listening to the SNES Podcast with your host, Soulblazer.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to Super NES Podcast, episode number 243. These are your hosts. I am Greg. He is Joe.
Hello.
And we're covering a game this time that I'm pretty sure I'm the one who selected it, because it is a game I had wanted to cover at some point anyway. We are covering another RPG for this one, which not a shock, given how many RPGs the system had during its lifespan.
Very
but
true.
this is a very unique title in some ways. We're looking at Secret Evermore, which is which was actually designed and created by the North American branch of Square, and it has a lot in common with, but it's especially not a part of the Legend of Mana franchise. So, or I should just say Mana franchise. Legend Mana was the game that came out around the same time as this did. But anyway, I played this game. I played this game back when it first came out. One of those typical, like, played through the game like for a week or so, enjoyed it, had fun with it, put it to the side, never thought about it again for years later. So I had not played it again until we covered the podcast. So I was very interested to go back to the game, see how it held up. Joe, I'm guessing this was your first time actually playing the game.
That's a very good guess.
But anyway, so the history for this game is kind of interesting. So, this game came out in North America, as I mentioned before, like October of 1995. Since the game was designed for the Western audiences, the game was also, since the game did well enough in the States, Nintendo picked up the publishing rights to publish the game in PAL lands, and it came out in Australia and Europe the following year. And there actually was plans to translate the game into Japanese and release it in Japan, but that never happened. For some reason, that never happened. Maybe they felt the game was too Western. Maybe they felt the Japanese market was just too saturated by similar games. But it's very interesting, and it's very interesting in this case to see. We see tons of times over the years of examples of Japanese games that were planned to be brought over to the West but never happened. And this is a rare case, like the reverse happening. So it's kind of interesting to see that. But anyway, yeah, so 1995 was a big year for Square. They were trying to expand their market in North America. RPGs at that time definitely had a niche market, but they were not as popular as they are now. And by RPGs, I mean both Western style RPGs and also Japanese games. Because obviously, the Western games were more popular in the West this time. Things like Ultima, Wizardly, Magic, that kind of stuff. But JRPGs definitely had a market here in the West, but it wasn't anywhere near like what it is now. So when Square was trying to increase their market share, of course, so in 1994, they decided to, they decided to take a page from. I believe Sega did do this with Sonic Knuckles. Joe, you may know more about this than I do, because wasn't that also developed by the U.S. side of things?
So, yes. So it was Sonic 3 and Sonic and Knuckles was kind of like a second half, quote, sequel to Sonic 3. And they were, two separate halves.
Yeah. Sorry, I'm actually thinking the wrong game. I'm thinking like Sonic Spinball. That was developed in the West,
Sonic
right?
Spinball was absolutely, that's Sega of America, yeah.
Exactly, yeah. So Square took a page from Sega's book and we want to make a game that sells well in the West. Let's have the development of the game done in the West. So, So of course, they were Squaresoft at the time. They went to the president of Squaresoft in North America, and were like, okay, we want you to make this game, and we want you to be. They weren't given very much to work with at the beginning. All they were told was that Square Japan wanted the game to be an American flavored Secret of Mana like game. So pretty much with that open-ended book. The company hired a bunch of people. These are all brand new people for the most part who work on this game. Also, by the way, which considering how well it's programmed, it's kind of surprising. But obviously they had tools. They had good tools and people around them to help them make the game, of course. But and so they worked on the game for the next year and a half until it was ready for release. So. Definitely one of the only times, as it is said, that a game by a Japanese company was actually developed in the West instead. So, and because of that, the game looks and feels very Western, in many areas. I mean, playing this game is curious because it's yes, it's very obviously inspired by Secret of Mana. There's a lot in common with Secret of Mana, like Secret of Evermore. The big things being real-time battles, the ring-shaped menu system, and the ability switch control between the two characters. However, it's also very obvious that the game was created in the West because of some heavy Western influences in this game. Yeah. Starting the character. He looks very American. I mean, he's a blonde-haired, blue-eyed teenager who looks he could be like a rock band artist or something like that. But he has a dog for a companion. Dogs of course are very popular over here. He's always referencing in the game, which I found to be very cute. Actually, some people just this is kind of hit or miss. Some people hate this, some people love it. I was fine with it. The character playing to go through the game, he's always he's always comparing his experiences and quoting lines of these cheesy B movies that he loves to watch. So, very different. So Western. It's kind of like a Japanese game at its core, but with a very Western layer draped over it to make it more appealing and more recognizable to people in the West who played the game. But so anyway, Joe, this being your first time in the game, I'm curious to hear your experiences with it and your experience with it and how well all this Western trapping and Western development of the game work for you.
Yeah. So, in all reality, it's all right. I'm not gonna. I can't really knock it. So, I noted in my notes that you are Marty McFly with a dog, because that's exactly who I thought he looked like. And the fact that you start the game walking out of a movie theater, kind of sets the tone for the character and the interactions that you're going to be dealing with. I love how it's just Podunk USA. That is such a English term for old school tiny town. I don't think anybody else in the world uses the word podunk. You know what I mean?
Probably not. I do wonder if Earthbound took a page from its development from this, because it's in trying to create an American-ish town to set the game in. Because there are similarities between the two towns.
So, I thought about that, and I actually put that in my notes. So one of the things I did say is that obviously, the core mechanics of this game is Secret of Mana. That it's there in the title. But I found this game really to be more akin to Earthbound. It's got a lot of that DNA, the humor that's it throughout the game. And yeah, I did see some people complain about the quotes and stuff like that, which I don't get. To me, if you're complaining about the humor that's there, it's just going over your head. It's not, I don't know, the game's not made for you, I guess. But this humor is just like the humor we had just with our last episode, with wow, why am I drawing a blank on that game now?
Because it's a very forgettable name. That's a problem.
Blue Sky Trooper. There we go.
Yes.
So yeah, Big Sky Trooper. So same thing there, like, you know, with the alien making fun of like the marketing and everything else as you start up the game. Like it's humor like that I can appreciate because there's time and effort put in to, you know, add a little bit of flavor to the environment and the game that you're playing. There are a few things that irked me, especially in the beginning here. So there's a cat that leads the dog astray, which then causes Marty to run after him, and they end up in a mansion. One of the big contentions for me was you don't see anything. You hear everything that's going on, but you can't see everything. And I think that was maybe a limitation, possibly, but I feel like they could have like done like that hazy transition thing where you could kind of see into the mansion and see what was going on. Hearing it just wasn't enough for me. That's just me. And of course they hijinks ensue and he gets transported to Evermore. Man, this, I don't know, like I was picking up what they were putting down. But at the same time, like, I felt like some of it was really out there. Like, you go from a mansion, you know, you transport to the mansion, you hit the machine, you get transported, you get sent into a room, you get a bazooka, you gotta shoot some robots. And then, like, once you destroy the robots, all of a sudden it zooms out, you're on a ship, and it's, like, crashing onto this land. And it's like, where did we go from mansion to ship? But anyways, I thought it was interesting either way. In that transition, your dog becomes like a mutated wolf, which fantastic. I did like that you could switch between the dog and Marty McFly if you choose. Also, I like that you can, in the settings, either make the dog aggressive or have more do like the puzzling stuff, which was cool. Because I'll tell you later on, you need that dog to be able to get ingredients, and which are lying all over the ground. Which I did like that, you know, basically ingredients are just everywhere and it's not really well hidden. So that's a plus. I'm trying to think of what else that really kind of...
So let me just expand upon some of the things you talked about.
Yeah.
So you play through the game, you go to four different realms. And each realm feels different enough that you can almost get the feel. In each realm, I think operates differently enough that you can also, you know, you can almost consider it to be like a mini game, like in its own, because it's like each realm has its own tech level, its own money, its own
yes.
people. The dog transforms just like different like every realm, so that's pretty cool. I have a list here somewhere what the dog changes into like each realm, and of course now I can't find.
There's a poodle. Yeah, he turns into like a poodle. A robot at one point, which is fantastic because his midsection is a toaster and toast will pop out of it. I loved that little bit of humor. I was trying to think of what else. It was the wolf in the prehistoric area, which is where you start. Man, I can't think of that fourth one.
Yeah.
But yeah, either way, he transforms.
Yep. You also find 4 different kinds of weapons. Weapons that you use in the game: sword, spear, axe, and bazooka, which is pretty nice. And yeah, the magic system in this game, as you touched upon, is very unique. I still don't know how I feel about it because in some ways I like it, in some ways I don't. Unlike many games, there's no magic points in this game. Instead, to be able to cast your spells, you need alchemy formulas, and in those formulas, you need ingredients. And as Joe mentioned, you need you do need to collect those ingredients. Some of them are out there, easy for you to find. Others of them are very rare, and you really have to hunt around to find them. The alchemists themselves can also be very hard to find as well.
Yes.
I know. So if there was one I had to look up. There was at least one guy that had to look up a walkthrough to find out where he was because I couldn't find him. So, so it's like. In some ways, I'm like, yeah, this is great because it's very unique. Like, it's very fun. It definitely, again, this is more inspired by Western RPGs because, because there are other Western RPGs which do similar things as far as needing to gather ingredients to cast magic, that kind of thing. But on the other hand, I'm just like, just give me a magic point. Just give me a traditional, straight up HP SP system that I'm used to for all these years, and just be done with it. So it's like. I still don't. Yeah, so I still don't. I still don't really know how I feel about that system because it's it's with a pro and a con, I think. But I guess it just depends upon your experience and tolerance for finding things. Out in the world and whatnot.
I put that alchemy is a huge pain in the butt.
It is. Yeah.
it is. It's a unique mechanic. I do like it, just like you do, to a point. I also put in my notes, I'm wondering if they put alchemy the way that it is to pad the game. And I only say that because there are dungeon sections in each of the realms. And those are, the mazes are, they're pretty bad.
It's interesting that you say padding the game. It's this because this is not a very long game. It's your typical, your typical playthrough of somebody of this game will only be 8 to 10 hours.
Right, right.
So as far as the RPG goes, that's pretty short.
Right, but I still feel like they padded it with, because I felt like the mazes part, and the enemies respawn like crazy. So it's if you go through the maze dungeon sections, and you don't know where you're going, you're going to be doing a lot of backtracking, which is going to result in you fighting a lot of enemies, which is going to slow you down, which is why I said it kind of feels like padding, there. And like I said, with the alchemy, having to find everything, and you can only use certain magic based on the ingredients that you have. You learn more alchemy as you meet the different alchemists. I don't know. It just felt like a bit of padding for me, but I agree. This was surprisingly, I did not beat this game, but looking at walkthroughs online, this is actually a surprisingly short game, and I did not expect to see the 10 to 12 hours that I saw for completion. I expected it to be at least 25 plus. So, that was surprising.
Yeah. I think it may have been a conscious decision by the programmers at the time to make the game short, because maybe they figured that Americans just had lesser attention spans.
That's what I was assuming, because I was thinking this is 95.
Yes. Mystic
Quest came out in what, 94? 93?
About that, I think, something like that.
And Square took that approach with Mystic Quest. They were like, we're going to make it shorter, and it's easier, and it's dumbed down, and I feel like that's kind of what was done here, but done a little bit better, maybe because there was a Western studio working on it. But yeah, I think the biggest disappointment I came across here is, so Secret of Mana, you could actually play multiplayer. This you can't. And I do think that's something that was missed. In recent years, there are patches that allow you to have multiplayer, so there's that.
The programmers said all along that that they decided right from the start the game's gonna be single player only to save memory because the game originally, because originally Square only planned Square only planned for the game to be 12 megabits, which is very which is a small game indeed. But as the game continued, programmers were like, we cannot make a game that size, and so grudgingly an increase, doubling of the size to 24 megabits was authorized.
Right.
So it's like, and they use most of that extra space for like the artwork, which we'll talk about here in a bit.
Yeah.
But from the very beginning, they always play single player only. So, but yeah, I did not know there were patches out there to allow like a patch out there like to allow like the multiplayer. That's pretty cool.
Yeah.
But you mentioned combat a little bit. Combat in this game I enjoyed. Combat in this game is very secret. It's very secret mana-ish. So you play like a mana game, you'll feel right at home here with this.
Yeah, I mean the stamina bar returns. So I kind of understood the mechanics there. I think the biggest issue I had with this game was I felt like I missed a lot more than I hit, and it didn't matter whether I was charged up 80%, 30%, 100%. It's like it decided, it was like best modern comparison I could think of is like Oblivion. Oblivion is very much like Dungeons and Dragons dice rolls every time you attack, and that's kind of what this felt like. It felt like dice rolls, which felt very different than what I was expecting, but it is what it is.
Right. Yeah. I had some of those problems also, and it's like but I had that issue. I had that issue sometimes in mana games too, and I'm just thinking that because of the way the graphics in this game are presented and the viewpoints, you may think you're in range when you're not. Because I think the mana games suffer. The older mana games at least suffer the same flaw. So yeah. I really don't know how much of it to attribute to the simple game design period, or just the fact that there may be a slight issue with the issue of collision detection, because I'm not really quite sure. It could be an issue with collision detection, but I'm not really quite sure to say, to say definitely either way.
Yeah, it's been a while since we played Secret of Mana, so I couldn't quite remember if I had the same issue there, and I most certainly wasn't going to boot the game up to play it to find out, so...
Secret of Mana is a good game, but
I agree. But anyway, we got through that game, so.
So combat in this game is fairly easy. Some of the enemies and some of the bosses can be tough, but I think like as long as but again, I think like the developers were trying to strike a balance, while making the game easier, while also trying to keep that same mana flavored combat and challenge in the game. And I think for the most part they succeeded. I think the issues I had of combat were more because of other systems coming to play. For example, magic. I said, that's not a fault of the combat itself. That's more a fault of the magic system, how it's programmed in the game and whatnot. So, but overall, I thought the combat in this game looked pretty good.
Oh, and since we're talking combat, I just want to mention I love when games put the boss on the front cover on the art, and then that ends up being the first boss that you encounter in the game. Fantastic. I hate when it's like, oh, cool, that's a cool bad guy. I can't wait to meet that bad guy. And then you have to like play for 30 hours to get to that bad guy. They don't do that here. That's the first bad guy you come across, which is fantastic. I love it.
Right. Right. So, anyway, combat segues very nicely in the graphics as well, because it's like, I think maybe some of the issues we had was like, I love the large sprites that this game uses, both for yourself and also for the enemies. But I also think that maybe that's also contributing to the fact that it's kind of hard to tell if you're close enough to hit or not.
Yeah, that's fair. That's fair.
But the graphics of the game are very good overall, I thought.
I thought the graphics are fantastic. They're vibrant. Yeah. They're well detailed. The environments are amazing. They clearly illustrate the region that you're in. Like, you know what kind of region you're in based on the backgrounds and the enemies that you're encountering. So 2 thumbs up for graphics for sure.
Yeah. The music in this game, some history with it also. Like, you know the history? So do you know the big spoiler as far as the music goes, Joe?
I do not.
Okay. The music of this game was done by a very famous composer, who this was his first project. He was a fan of video games in high school. Felt most of the games had kind of like bad musical scores overall. He made a demo after graduating high school and sent it out to various companies trying to say, hey, if I want to be a composer, here's some of my work. Squaresoft heard the demo, liked it, hired him to do Secret of Evermore, and he's gone on to a very famous career after that. The person I'm talking about is Jeremy Soule. So Jeremy Soule is best known probably now. He's done numerous games over the years, but he's probably best known now nowadays by most gamers for his work, like scoring the more recent Elder Scroll games, Morrowind, Oblivion, Skyrim. So it sounds like it's music, definitely for sure. It's a very, very good soundtrack. It's very ambient, low key, kind of relaxing. Kind of relaxing music, like in many areas, matches the tone of the game perfectly.
Yeah, so I really enjoyed the music in this game, and that doesn't surprise me that he was the composer now that I know who he is. But also, like, there was a lot of dead air while playing as well, which was kind of weird. Like, the ambient noise works, but there was definitely points where, like, it definitely didn't sound like there was any music, and it was just kind of weird to just kind of be in a game like this with no music. But I liked the music, and I thought the sound effects were great. And couple that with the graphics, and again, like, the environments that you're in, like, to me, these two elements here kind of trump everything else that we've complained about with the game. I like, generally, you could look at the game and be like, maybe a 3, maybe spoiler. But with the graphics and sound, it elevates this game really well, and this gets like a high 4-star review for me, almost 5.
I did not mind those dead areas as much as you did. I do agree. It's a bit out of place for a game, but like maybe there was programming reasons why they had to do it that way and whatnot. But, also, if you are a collector, we will talk about prices for this game later on toward the end, of course. But if you're a collector, the holy grail to find for this is like back when the game's coming out to help drive up interest in sales. Square also announced that anybody who pre-ordered the game would also receive a CD containing the soundtrack like this game. 29 tracks in total. The first 8 of them just being arranged versions of the music that the game had. And this is back at the time period when like nobody really listened to game music here in the States. It's like, so, like, they were popular in Japan already by this point, but if you want to listen to that stuff, you got to import it from Japan, usually at great expense. Luckily, that's become a lot cheaper to do these days, even if you do still want to get the physical CDs. But, this is one of the first cases like about like, a game having music available in the West, and it kind of fits it, overall fits everything. It's like a Western design game with a Western designed soundtrack to go with it.
Right.
Like I said, those are only offered to people who pre-ordered the game. As a result, those are very hard to find, like find nowadays, and they go for a good amount of money, like you do. So, but anyway. Speaking about hard to find things, as I said before, the game was published by Nintendo overseas in Europe and Australia because of the game's success here in North America. It was translated. The game was translated into German, French, and Spanish, and some of those PAL versions also included a strategy guide, which we did not get here in the U.S. version of the game, and those also go for a pretty penny these days as well. So anyway. So the reviews of this game were generally positive. When the game came out, many people really enjoyed the game. Felt the game did a very good job of meeting its goal of being like a Western designed RPG. However, the biggest complaint was that Square was kind of a victim of its own success here because the fact that the bar was set so high by this point because so many good games that they and other companies had come out in the West like of JRPGs to Super NES, that the overall that you can sum up most reviews of this game back in the contemporary when it came out by saying it's a very good game. However, it's not as good as Square's other games. Which fair, it's not. But Square was kind of the victim of its own success because their track record wasn't so good. The game would have been praised higher than it was. Right. Unfortunately, when you compare the game to the classics like Final Fantasy 3, Final Fantasy 4, Final Fantasy 6, Secret of Mana, Chrono Trigger, etc., it's just not as good as those games, unfortunately. So while it is good, it just cannot it cannot live with the standards. And I think that kind of held back sales a little bit, perhaps, because Square did not try this experiment again in later years. The game sold well, like I said, but I don't think it was a smash hit that Square was hoping to. I don't think the game got the success or the recognition that Square wanted a U.S. designed JRPG to get. Yeah. Probably because that very reason, like about the game just not being as good as the other Japanese designed RPGs. So. You could argue back and forth all day, I think, as to whether or not really that's a fair comparison and whether or not the American developers at that time were as good as their Japanese counterparts at making RPGs and other stuff like that. But it's like, it's a very fair complaint that I want to certainly agree with.
Yeah, I can't argue that.
But anyway, just to give some examples, like about scores, Game Rankings gives an aggravated score of 81% like this game. Just to give some scores from magazines of the time period, UGM gave 33.5 out of 40. GameFan gave it 246 out of 300. We are system there, GameFan. GamePro gave it 3.6 out of 5. Nintendo Power gave 3.8 out of 5. So yeah, pretty good scores, across the board. Nobody really trashed it. But and like most, have you heard of the All Games site, Joe? It's a very popular, our RPG site, that's around these days.
I have not.
They did a very good job of summarizing. So they did a very good job summarizing the game when they summarized the game when they covered it back 2014, by basically saying, quote, "It's a good solid RPG, but those expecting remarkable characters or a dramatic evolving story will probably be disappointed." Which I agree with 100%. Yeah. I mean, it's a good solid game, but it's not like amazing. It's not like it's not in the same bar as the other Square JRPGs, because obviously those games are so good. But anyway, this game sadly has not been re-released over the years. So it's like, if you want to play it today, you have to either buy the game or emulate it. But unfortunately, it's like, I think this game I think is still this game's still pretty fun. I mean, if you go into it knowing what you're expecting, that's a light action RPG style game in style of Mana, not as good as the Japanese counterparts. You definitely get some fun with this game. It's not amazing. I don't think the game is as good now as it was back then. But I think overall it's still a very good, good squarish JRPG. Of the Mana cut. If you enjoy the Mana games, there's certainly no reason that you wouldn't enjoy this one as well.
Yeah, that's fair.
I think you already said that, Joe, that you thought the game was only average, but the graphics and music kind of bumped the score up for you.
Yeah. I mean, I enjoyed my time with it for the most part. I was frustrated to begin with. If anybody happens to actually take my advice and follow me on Facebook, you will know that I did express my dislike for the game to start off with. But yeah, it definitely warmed up to me. And I can't say that I would, tell you to buy a copy of this, but emulate it. It should be experienced. Yeah. It's kind of disappointing that this was their only game. They were only given one shot, and unfortunately, they put in a good effort. And when you think about like what Greg was saying, all these guys were basically new to programming for this, Super Nintendo or whatever. And they're, separate, they're literally an, ocean apart from Squaresoft and the other people who are making the Final Fantasy games and everything else, and they're literally just kind of like, boom, you're here, you're in North America, you got to build this game, it's for us Westerners, and basically Square gave you some scraps to kind of map out what a story could be and put it together, and this is the date. So I think overall, considering what was put, before them, I think they did a good job. There are some spots where there's definitely some bugs. I know I complained about this with the Secret of Mana game. I'm still not a fan of the wheel, but that is what it is. But yeah, there was a point, I can't remember what level I was in, but it's a known bug where like you can soft lock the game, and sure enough, I did it.
Yeah.
But yeah, and there was a couple times where like my dog like just vanished off the screen. Like he stepped somewhere and he just vanished off the screen, and I was like, huh, where did it go? And like I could see him walking up at the very, very edge, like in some foliage or whatever, like, because it happened twice in the prehistoric area when you start off in. And I was just like, oh man. I was like I get it, but it's like, man.
I did not have that problem. That sucks. But I do know. I do know about soft lock in the game. That didn't happen to me. Thank God. But it's like,
I was gonna say, of course, it's my luck. I mean, the guy who didn't grow up with the Super Nintendo is gonna come across all the bugs.
The only annoyance I had with the dog personally was I thought he barked too much.
Yeah, I also felt that he did bark too much, but also like he's finding stuff for me, so it's true. Like you got to deal with it.
yeah. So there are a number of secrets, glitches, Easter eggs, whatever in this game. Whether or not they're here because of bugs in the game, or whether or not because they were intentionally left here, varies. I think in most cases, but I'll just go over the big ones. The big ones. The big ones like real big. One of the most amusing ones I think is one of the ones that definitely was put here on purpose is so-called profanity punishment. If you start the game, name your character that infamous 4-letter word that begins with F. The dialogue of one of the characters that you reach will change, and it'll charge you three amulets instead of one ticking of the game. So, kind of an interesting thing there about that. There's a bug in the game to give you like infinite run stamina that you can definitely use if you want to. There's a way to get invincibility during boss battles. That's definitely that's definitely a glitch. Yeah. You can also get infinite call beads. I definitely believe that's also a glitch as well. The developers took a page from Zelda. There's a way if you taunt the chickens repeatedly, they will eventually not attack you. But they will reduce your HP to 1. Like the game would say, you are warned, and then you knock it down to like 1 HP. Right. So that's a pretty cute scene. There's an extra scene you can see in the endings after waiting 2 minutes, after the credits end. So that's pretty cool. There's a hidden boss you can find. There's also a way to quickly level up your weapon proficiency, and you can also skip skipping the boss fight entirely if you want to. Huh. So, and finally, there are ways to get some free items in this game by doing certain things like in the proper order as well, which is pretty cool. So, not critical, but they do help. But they do help the gameplay. So, like I said before, the game is popular. It sold pretty well. So, plenty of copies of this game are available on eBay. when I was doing research, I found 145 copies of this game. This game listed on eBay with 100 to 162 copies of the game that recently sold. Prices of this game are actually like all over the place, and actually not that bad altogether for pricing. I did not see the evidence that in so I did not see the evidence that any repros for this game were this game were being sold. It's possible there are some that out there that were made in the past, but everything I saw on eBay looked real, and everything was and nothing was marked as not being real. So I'm going to assume that all these copies were actually real prices of real versions of the game. So there's a wide variance between the prices of this game also. So it is a large part of it will depend upon your patience level and when you strike the hour and to get the game versus some other time as well. So card-only versions of the game sold anywhere. And here's that wide variance of price we're talking about. Anywhere from a low of $12, that was a steal, all the way up to $77. So a pretty big price range. $30 to $40 seems the most average price for the price of this game, which an OG RPG from Square. Fair price, I think. It's pretty much what you expect to see, especially for a game that's not been released again. Unlike many other games that Square's done over the years. So, CIB copies of this game range also very wildly from a very beat up copy of the game with that's over $73 all the way up to a pristine, complete, everything included copy of the game of $246. So that's not too bad at pricing. Even the sale pricing was not that's not extreme. There was one factory sale copy of the game that sold recently for $3 and $14, and there was a graded copy of the game, of course, which sold for a much higher price of $526.
I mean, even for a graded copy, that's kind of cheap. But
yeah, it is.
A sealed copy for $315 for an RPG is pretty damn good.
It is, yeah. So, and finally, I want to note that many of the developers who were hired to work in this game are still active. Still active in the game industry today. They can be found in companies like Crave Dog Entertainment, Electronic Arts, Boss Game Studios, Microsoft Game Studios, Gas Powered Games, and several others. So. A lot of people interested today can say, yeah, my first major video game that I worked on was Secret of Evermore. Yeah. So, not a bad thing to have in your resume.
Right.
But, anyway, there may be a rights issue perhaps involved because of the American roots of this game. That may be why Square's never released the game since then, or maybe Square Japan Sega Japan just is nope, didn't exist. We wipe our hands about this entirely. So, I mean, who knows?
Yeah, I think the story would be different if they had released that Japanese version, but I think since that Japanese version was canceled, I think it's exactly that. It's an offshoot that's not connected to the rest of the series, and it is what it is. It's just like this game. It's an imaginary place that you can go to.
There's also the dialogue in this game is also one last point. The dialogue in this game is very American. It's very cringy though in some places. It's even for the 90s when it came out. It's really folks, but they tried to appreciate. But I think they tried it a little bit too hard in some cases. I'll give you this. So I know you didn't finish the game, but it's there's one line when somebody says to you late in the game, about the word Evermore, that what you gotta do, because otherwise he says or Evermore will be nevermore, forevermore. So it's really, folks?
Yeah.
But anyway, yeah. So the writing's definitely a product of its times in some ways. And nowadays there really isn't a need like a need to make an American style RPG because people are doing that all the time.
Yeah.
Indie games and indie companies, people who grew up playing games like this, decided to make their own companies, make their own games, give it a very Western flair, while also keeping true to Japanese roots. And many of those games are very, very good. So it's like. To give one recent example, I started playing a bit ago, Secret of Stars, for example.
Yes.
But it's interesting to see how much the video game market in some ways has changed in the last 30 years, and how in some ways it hasn't, because people there always was a niche, I think, for Western style JRPGs, but now that niche is being filled. Now that niche is being filled not by the big companies, but by the smaller indie groups.
Yeah.
So this game is very interesting. Like the interesting history and DNA behind it. It's like maybe some of these Western indie JRPG style games wouldn't have happened if Secret of Mana hadn't come out. I mean, who knows? But it's very interesting. It's a very interesting footnote, at least in the history like JRPGs. So, and one last note, in case you're curious, Joe, the world record for speedrun for this game without using some bugs and glitches, but not tool assisted, it looks like it's an amazing 59 minutes and 22 seconds.
Wow. Okay.
So
that makes sense though, because you did say there was like a bug where you could skip bosses. So
one boss.
Yeah.
Yes.
So I can see how that would cut time down.
The game was also done at a without glitches. There was also running this game done at AGDQ back in 2018. That was 1 hour 30. They're just a second shy of 1 hour and 39 minutes.
Wow. Okay.
And those are done live. It's like the pressure's on them.
Yep.
Well, it used to be done live. Nowadays, the combination of being in person and also online, because they changed over to online before the pandemic hit, and then they continue to allow online play afterwards.
Yeah.
So it's a combination of things these days. But anyway, that's the game for you. Fun playing it. Fun to go back to it again. That's not hard to play as well as I remember, but still like pretty good game in its own right, for sure. So, another game I spent a lot of time with as a kid, I'm curious to go back to see how it holds up, is going to be our next game, coming up, which is also kind of action RPG-ish, like in many ways. We're going to be looking at the very unique, EVO, Quest for Evolution, which is published by Enix, and it's actually a port of a game that came out for Japanese like computer system. So I remember that being your pick, Joe. Have you ever played the game before, or is this gonna be your first time as well?
No, this is definitely going to be my first time. It's definitely one I've seen before, and it kind of like it's an evolution type of game. So I found it to be rather unique.
Yeah, I think it's very unique for sure. So, like I said before, I played this a lot back then. I'm curious to see how the game holds up today. So, we will get into it. As always, we appreciate you being here, being with us. If you have any questions, comments, feedback, please feel free to send us a big comment on Facebook, or you can also send me an email directly to the SNES Podcast @yahoo.com. Joe, where can they reach you at?
Well, you can find me on my very public and not family-friendly Facebook. I also have a Twitter account at JOESUX30, and I do the Reticle Retro Roundup, not family-friendly, with former co-host George. And I've had a lot of people complain about our rants, so if you come over from this podcast to go to that podcast, just know that like we pick a topic, but it's a reason for me and George to get together once a month and just basically, chit chat, and then the topic is what holds it together. So there will be tangents.
Okay.
But yeah, we always talk our topic. So I don't, I have gotten some complaints though, like that we just have too many tangents. But I'm like, we always cover the subject that we're covering. It's just sometimes it takes us an hour and a half to get to it.
I mean, yeah, tangents are fine. I think as long as they're as long as they're at least semi on topic.
Yeah.
I think I think tangents are fine.
Yeah. George always, he's always like, everyone's complaining about tangents, and I'm like, whatever. Like, that's why there's a fast forward button. Like, if you're really that, interested in hearing what we have to say about the topic, there's a fast forward button. You can skip through them.
True.
But when I'm like, hey, George, what have you been up to retro? Like, that just opens the door for an hour-long conversation. It happens.
Yeah. Whereas in this podcast, we do most of that off mic. So
right, exactly.
Just see it. But different podcast, different strokes.
Yep.
I mean, but anyway, that's cool. So, all right then. As always, thank you very much for listening to the podcast. We appreciate each every one of you. See you again next time, and meanwhile, stay safe, be well. Catch you all folks later.
Bye.
Nintendo controls 80% of the video market. But no matter how you play the game, or which game you play, things definitely have come a long way since Pac-Man.
Now you're playing with power. Deep power.